So now we're going to move on to data wrangling. Over the next 3 videos, I'm going to be demonstrating the R script that I created for wrangling my data. It's important to note that there's many ways in which you can go ahead and execute these R commands. This is my approach. There would be 100 different ways you can do this, and some maybe are going to be more efficient than what I put together. But this is one way to wrangle the data that I have, and I'm going to try to take a look closely for each of the steps so that you can take a look at the code I'm using and be able to apply that to the problems that you're working on. So with the data wrangling plan in place, we're going to go ahead and execute our data wrangling plan in R. So what we have here is a script file that I called course eval wrangling. So this is my data wrangling file that's going to be consist of a sequence of R commands that I'm going to be executing to wrangle my data. So I certainly could be entering these commands in one at a time in the console, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to execute them directly from the script. Now, R will ignore any line that begins with a hashtag, and that's to indicate that it's a comment. And it's really important to use comments in your script to remind yourself or whoever's going to look at the script in the future what you're trying to do. So I typically will have a header, and that's where I'm going to explain the purpose of the script, where I indicate when it was created, and then every time I make revisions to the script, I will include that in my revision history so I can see how the script has changed over time. And then along the way, I will also put comments for each step that I'm making to, again, explain what I'm trying to do. So when I come back and take a look at this, I can look at my comments and understand what the purpose of the command. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to set my working directory. So I with my cursor somewhere on that command line, I hit Control and Enter. And that's going to, you can see down in the console, that has just set my working directory as I want it to define. And that's actually this working directory over here. So now it's working. It's going to, if it needs to bring in files or work, in this case, it's going to bring in files, and it's going to be looking in this working directory for those files that I'm going to bring in. And that's actually my second step. So I'm going to scroll up here a little bit. And so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in this CSV file that I have identified right here. And I'm going to bring that from the working directory and then going to load it into a data frame. Now, a data frame in R is kind of like it's almost like it's a spreadsheet type of matrix that contains my data. And so it's going to basically load it from that CSV file into R as a data frame. So when I put my cursor on that line and Control Enter to run that, what you can see is up here in the global environment, it just created that survey data. That's the name of this data frame that I've created. And I can see that there are 48,844 rows of that, and there's 31 different columns or 31 variables in that data frame. And what's really neat, if I double click on this, it opens up a tab over here where I can visually examine the data frame. So this is the data frame structure, and it looks just like a spreadsheet or a table. So I'm going to close this window for now just to get that out of the way. So now I know that the data loaded. If I wanted to view the data just in my console, I could then go to the next command and to be able to view the first 10 rows. Since there's 48,000 rows, I don't want to view all those rows in my console. I just want to take a quick glimpse at it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute this command, this head command, to be able to view the first 10 records of that data frame. So even though my cursor is not on that command, it's on the comment command before, R will to ignore that first line and head directly into the next command. So I hit Control Enter. And this is where it gets a little messy. You can see that it's showing all the data, the first 10 rows, but it's not fitting in that window. So it's going to kind of wrap to the next line, and you can see that it's showing all the data that's in that data frame. So to understand the data a little bit better, I'm going to go and take a look at the column names. So I want R to show me a list of all the column names in my data frame. So that's what this next command is going to do. So Control R. And now I can see that there's 31 different column names, and it's identifying each of these. And so the order is kind of, these are listed in rows. And so this is the first 6 rows. These are the first 6 columns, I'm sorry. And then the second 6 columns and so forth. So you can see all the columns that are in my data frame. All right, so the data is loaded. I see all the columns. I'm confident that the data is there, and now I can begin working on it. So let's begin wrangling. So next, I'm going to scroll up a little bit here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin deleting these columns that didn't have any name or didn't have any data in them. So I'm going to hit Control Enter here. And what happened is it just removed the course name column. And I'm going to continue on, Control Enter, to remove these other columns. All right, so now those columns have all been removed from my data frame. And scrolling up a little bit here. Next, what I'm going to do is going to remove the columns that are not needed. So these are the columns that were indicating like department name and the division, and all this is going to be the same data because that's kind of the scope of the data that I collected. They're all from the CIS department and from the School of Business and Technology, so this data is really meaningless for my analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So it's Control Enter and to execute each of these commands. And there we go. And then finally, there's 3 more columns that I want to delete because these columns can be derived from the term name and the campus abbreviation columns. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, this is the same command. I'm going to hit Control Enter to execute each of these commands. There we go. All right, so that is the initial data wrangling for removing or loading the data and removing the initial set of columns. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename some columns, and that's what you can see here. And so there's a simple command here that I'm going to be renaming from the survey data data set or data frame. I'm going to be renaming the fact person ID to faculty ID, the question subcategory to question type, and the campus abbreviation to campus code. So I'm just going to do Control Enter, Control Enter, Control Enter to execute those commands. Okay, so now the data that I don't want to use, that I don't need to use in my analysis, those columns have been removed. And then I've renamed 3 columns to be more meaningful or better aligned with the vernacular that we would use at the college. So that's the end of this first part of the data wrangling. And this was just simply to kind of get the data set up. Next, we're going to go ahead and start working with the data.